Okay, before we start the very, very intricate details of Birchas Hashachar, which is definitely a highlight before we start Pesukah de Zimra, let's understand a little bit about Hakdama to understand brachas in general, because we are going to be reciting 15 brachas, and 15 brachas require a lot of Baruch Atah Hashem, so it's kedai just for a moment before we go through them to understand exactly what it's all about. And obviously this is something that applies to all brachas, but just before we mention 15 brachas, let's understand a bit. Now the Shulchan Aruch, and Orach Chaim Siman Hey, discusses in detail, and he brings down that when you make a bracha, you have an obligation to understand the meaning of what you're about to say. Specifically, obviously it applies to all tefillahs, but the Shulchan Aruch paskins, it's a psak in halacha that applies to any bracha that you're about to make, which means Birchas Hashachar, you're about to make 15 brachas, thanking Hashem, which we'll try to get into, but we have to understand, very importantly, what exactly are the words actually telling us. The Teitzos Chaim, the Nefesh Chaim, and others brings down the word Baruch. Now, Baruch we translate generally, if you look at the Art Scroll, I think they do translate it, they do, as blessed. Now, they do that because it's simple, but obviously there's much more to it than blessed. Okay? Baruch, according to many in the Svarim, the Nefesh Chaim, the Teitzos Chaim, and others as well, that say even though Baruch normally means blessed, when you're talking to the Rabbeinu Shalom, it cannot mean blessed. Why? Because the Rabbeinu Shalom is the makar of all bracha. The Rabbeinu Shalom is the source of all bracha, and therefore no human being can actually think that he's blessing Hashem. So if you're talking to Hashem, which is what we are doing when we're making a bracha, you cannot say that Baruch means blessed. Rather, the Zohar Kodesh comes along, and the Zohar says that Baruch over here, when referring to the Rabbeinu Shalom, is basically saying that the Rabbeinu Shalom is the designer and the source of all bracha. So that's what Baruch means in this context over here specifically. Now, moving on to the idea of Birchas Hashachar, and then we'll go into the specific details. The Mishnah Berurah in Siman Mem Vav says like this. Says the Mishnah Berurah, and he brings the Gemara in Brachos Laman Hey that says that a person is also lehenes ba'olam hazeh b'lo bracha. That means it's also for a person to have any benefit from this world without making a bracha first. And the Gemara brings a stira, a contradiction, between two psukim. Pasuk number 1, La Hashem ha'oretz u'malaya. HaKadosh Baruch Hu has the whole world. Everything belongs to Hashem. Hashem is the world and its fullness. Everything belongs to Hashem. And then there's another pasuk that says, V'ha'oretz nosan ifnei Adam, that the land is given over to people. So which one is it? Is the land and everything given to Hashem, or is it given to us human beings to utilize? So the Gemara, again, this is all the Gemara in Brachas Lamed Hey, the Gemara tells us that really and truthfully, Avada, the whole world belongs to the Rabbeinu Shalom, but we can buy parts of the world for ourselves. How do we do that? Says the Gemara about making a bracha. When you make a bracha, you are essentially buying the hana that you are having in this world from Hashem who owns it. And that's why Birchas Hashachar is the very first time we are going to go through much of the gratitude and the Koros HaTov that we have for the Rabbeinu Shalom for some of the basic things in life, which is why it makes it so important to realize what we're about to say in the words, what they mean. So, we've got 15 brachas over here, and they come from two different places. The first one, as points out Rav Schwab, is the Gemara in Brachos, Daf Samach Amud Beis, where the Gemara lists them into the order of a person's waking up in the morning. So the Gemara says, for example, upon waking you say Kaneshama, we've spoken about that already. And then the Gemara says, Ki shama kol tarnagola, when you hear the voice of the tarnagol, of the rooster, you say, Asher nasan esech v'vinu lahakim ben yom v'vein loila. When you touch your eyes, b'keach ivrim. When you move your limbs and sit up, matir asurim. When you get dressed, balbish women. And it continues and continues throughout the 15 brachas that we make. We have 3 additional brachas that are not mentioned over there in the Gemara in Brachos Daf Samach, but rather mentioned the Gemara in Menachos Daf Mem Gimel Amud Beis, that says nothing to do with getting up in the morning, and we'll have to explain why we say them in the morning. And that is number 1, Shelo Yasani Goy, number 2, Shelo Yasani Oved, Shelo Yasani Isha. Why do we make those specifically in the morning when we wake up? The rest of the brachas are when we wake up, how we wake up, when we get dressed, and everything else. Those don't seem to fit in. So today we're just going to go to bracha. The last one also, we'll get to that one also. Very good. But that also question is how that fits in. But that's not mentioned so clearly. We'll get to that. Let's start with number one. We've got 15 to go through. Let's go through number one. If we get to a bracha a day, we'll be doing great. Maybe even two. So the basic idea is that we are thanking the Rabbeinu Shalom for giving the rooster the knowledge, the das, the understanding, the brain, to be able to differentiate between day and night. That's the basic idea, right? That's the simple level. If you want to go a little bit of a deeper level, as the Schwab brings down, is that sechvi, hanoisin sechvi vina. What's sechvi? Rashi and Tosfos says it means a rooster, right? In Arabic, a rooster is called a sechvi. Gemara in Rosh Hashanah, Chavav Amud Aleph. However, Tosfos comes along, and Tosfos says, in fact, this bracha, was intended to give a thank you to the Rabbeinu Shalom for the existence of the ability, even though we don't actually hear the chicken. So even though when we wake up in the morning, we don't necessarily, in the old building, by the way, we actually used to hear the rooster. You remember that? Because there was one by the staircase. We used to hear it, right? Which is interesting because you hear it much earlier. But whatever. The point is, that's right, which is a whole shmooze why Ben Yom Ben Lola. Okay? Depends on what you call Ben Yom Ben Lola. But the idea basically is that Tosfos says, even though you don't necessarily hear the rooster, but we have the ability to hear it, which is very, very important, and that happens during that time. So that is the very first bracha that we're making. What's that? No, it happens to be a very interesting idea that we hear the rooster way before it gets light, right? Because, and I'll tell you a very simple idea, because the rooster has the ability, even perhaps more than a human being in this sense, to be able to detect a very small little bit of light that's coming through the darkness. And that's a very important idea, because the first bracha that we're making over here is that exact thing. The first bracha that we're making is thanking the Rabbeinu Shalom to be able to differentiate, to understand the difference between day and night. That's what it is. And that's what we're thanking the Rabbeinu Shalom for. That's the very first bracha that we make in Birchas Hashachar. B'ez Hashem, tomorrow we'll go through one or two of the next brachas, which are some of the basic ideas of gratitude, of thanking the Rabbeinu Shalom for what He's given us in our world, in our day, and in our lives. B'ez Hashem, tomorrow we'll continue.